the workshop tonight that you're attending is being run jointly by me, Jen, from Scotdec, the Scottish Fairtrade Forum, although they're not present tonight, but we're going to sort of speak on their behalf, and the Fairtrade Foundation down in London. So it's a sort of three-way workshop that we've planned and worked on together. So yeah, my name's Jen, and I work for an education charity in Scotland called Scotdec. DEC stands for Development Education Centre. Our office is based in Edinburgh, and we're responsible largely for 8 local authorities around Edinburgh. There are 5 DECs in Scotland dotted all around the country, and so every local authority is served by a development education centre that will be able to support you with your Fairtrade Schools award. So I'm going to start off the session and just welcome everybody, and then Joanna is going to speak to us about the award scheme and the different levels and the sort of deepening engagement as we go. And then we'll take a sort of question and answer session then about a third of the way through. And then I will continue and we'll look in more depth at the Scottish curriculum and what Fairtrade might look like in different areas of the curriculum and how to embed it. So that's the sort of structure of the presentation tonight. So I think, Joanna, should we just make a start? Okay,
yeah, Jen, do people need to be admitted if they're waiting?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think that's on you, so you might just have to check and see if latecomers.
Keep an eye out for that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, good plan. I'll keep an eye out for people. Yeah, grand. Okay, so I think I've sort of touched on these, but these are the main aims. I know there's a lot of text there. The main aims of our session tonight, the things we're going to try and address. So we're going to start by looking at the deepening levels of engagement and participation in the award. We're going to look at some practical ideas. We had Catherine Newman from the Scottish Fairtrade Forum and myself ran a little sort of research group before we put this workshop together, and there were quite a lot of requests from people for fresh ideas as they progress, for challenges as they progress through the award scheme, saying, you know, they're looking for new things to try because it does require you to have a new challenge each time you move through the award. So we're going to try and give you some practical ideas and resources and campaigns which you can use. And then we're going to look at how the award supports other award schemes such as Eco Schools and Rights Respecting Schools Award. And then I will go through the Scottish curriculum in a bit more depth and look at how we can embed Fairtrade in existing school topics. Okay, so welcome to Sarah, who's just joined us there. So I'm just going to pop it, and I'm not sure if you've seen this before. This is what we call a blob tree, and you could use these if teachers amongst us can use these with our learners, maybe at the beginning of a topic or as a kind of informal assessment, or you might use it at the beginning and then again at the end. This is sort of a way of assessing where you are on your Fairtrade Schools journey. So from the sign up, I know you were asked to kind of state that when you signed up on Eventbrite. I could see that there's a real range of different experience in the call tonight. So some who have registered and haven't started yet, some who have completed maybe the first level, they're looking for new challenges, and some who are Fairtrade Schools and are looking to renew their status and for fresh challenges. So I don't know if you want to put in the chat just now where you might, this might not be relevant to all if you're from a different organisation, it's not actually working on the award scheme. I suppose you could put in your chat maybe your level of awareness of the award scheme, where you feel, you know, what sort of depth your knowledge is at. So we've got Fair Aware, which is the first level, working towards Fair Active, great. Second level, hoping to go for the last. Okay, and your knowledge about all the different levels, although you're not actually working through them actively yourself. Okay, well, hopefully, you know, if you're at the beginning, if you're a 2 or a 3 and you're climbing up the tree, by the end of the session tonight, you'll be a little bit further up the tree or feel supported or know of networks and people that you can go to for support to help you as you go through your journey. So, as I said, the Scottish Fairtrade Forum can't come along this evening, and so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about them. The Scottish Fairtrade Forum is the network that we have here in Scotland. They're almost like a Scottish platform for the Fairtrade Foundation, which is based down in London. And it works very closely with the foundation. So it's here to support you through your Fairtrade Schools Award scheme. So if you were looking for help, then you can contact them and we'll give you their email address at the end of the session. And they can help to connect you with other teachers, with other organisations, and provide you with support and advice and fresh ideas for challenges as you move through. I would encourage you to go onto their website to join the forum. If you sign up to the forum, then you'll be kept up to date with all things fair trade happening here in Scotland. It was also instrumental in driving forward the agenda to achieve Scotland's fair trade status, making us one of the first countries in the world to hold this accolade. And this status means that people, government, businesses, public bodies, community organisations across Scotland have come together to meet stringent criteria to promote fair trade. And as part of that, we have committed to teaching and including fair trade in our schools and in our curriculum. So I'm going to hand over just now to Joanna, who's going to warm us up with a little icebreaker, I think, and then she's going to talk to us about the Fair Trade Award scheme and the different levels and what is involved. So thank you, Joanna.
Thank you, Jen. I've just realised I've done my slides in a real fancy click way, so I'm going to have to keep saying click please and click please.
Okay. I'll try and be on it.
Okay, we'll whiz through this because I'm sure you're all going to be marvellous at this. So one click please, Jen.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to play a little game here. Right, so your guessing game, and when I've given you the 3 clues, if you want to put your hand up, you know, or unmute yourself and shout your answer, then by all means do. So it is thought to have originated in Ethiopia. Another click please, Jen. Yeah, we call it a bean, but it's really the seed of a fruit, and yes, it could help you live longer. Well done, Elaine. One more click please, Jen, and then we'll see. That is your morning coffee or morning, noon and night coffee. Oh,
a bit on the click there.
No, but that's me. I've done the sequencing wrong. Okay, well, click please, Jen, and we'll yes, that's the picture that should have come at the end. I've given you that one. It takes about 200 days from seed to harvest of this product. It needs temperatures of over 20 degrees to grow. And it takes 10,000 litres of water to grow 1 kilo of raw product. That is our seriously thirsty friend cotton there. Hopefully the next slide, the sequencing is right. Oh, marvellous. Okay, I think you're all going to know that one anyway. Top click, please, Jen. The name means food of the gods. The trees take around 5 years to produce their first fruit, and the Aztecs used it as currency. What is that product? Does anybody know? Correct, it is cocoa. That obviously we have our lovely chocolate that we all rely upon. So next one, please, Jen. Oh, this one's a little bit trickier. The name means little pod in Spanish. It is the only edible fruit of the orchid family. Isn't that interesting? And it's also used extensively in perfumes and cosmetics. Does anybody know what that is? Any guesses?
Yes, vanilla.
It is vanilla. Well done, Sue. That is vanilla. Okay, next one, please, Jen. I know Sue will know this one for sure, and probably most of you will. It comes from a tree which can live for 500 years or even more. It is actually a juice, and it is used in cooking, cosmetics, medicine, soaps and fuel. What is that?
Olive oil.
It is olive oil. And doesn't that look lovely? Right, next one please, Jen. Oh, I like this one. This one's probably quite tricky. I don't think children would ever get this one. See, now why is number 2 popped up first? Goodness me. My PowerPoint skills are terrible. Okay, so let's start with number 2. The shell can be used and is used for paints and waterproofing. It does not grow, unusually it does not grow within the fruit, but it hangs from the base of the fruit, as you can see there. Next one please, Jen. They're always roasted, boiled or steamed before being deshelled, as the shell can irritate your skin. And yes, Miss Holligan, it is a cashew. And I think we've got one more. Everyone should know this one because it's easy peasy. Right. Its name comes from the Arabic word for finger. And it's actually a berry. Now that blows my mind. And what it grows on is a herb and not a tree, because there's no wood in that trunk. It is a very large herb. Anybody know what that is?
Banana.
It is a banana. Well done. Okay, so that's just a little fun warm up, nice one to do with kids, because some of those in particular, things like the vanilla and the cashew are, well, and actually even the cocoa and the coffee, very puzzling to people who don't get involved in a lot of fair trade products. Apologies if you can hear my other cat shouting at me though, I don't know what she wants. So quick intro to Fairtrade schools. I'm assuming probably a few of you probably know a fair bit about all of this, but I'm going to sort of do this from a point of view as if you were relatively new. So first slide please, Jen. Thank you. So the Fairtrade School Awards have been around for quite a long time, and the first iterations were actually born out of lots of different partner organisations responding to demand from schools to create something structured for their engagement, which then came in-house to the Fairtrade Foundation and was launched as the sort of Fairtrade School Award that you know in about 2008. Oh, somebody's just off mute there. Might be useful to be muted. There's a little bit of noise. So the first Fairtrade School Award within the foundation. Mute me. Thank you. So that changed and evolved over time to what you see now, which is that we have these 3 awards. So they I see that's a little bit misleading. They actually go up from the bottom there: Fair Aware, Fair Active and Fair Achiever. What is the point of the Fairtrade School Awards? Well, you know, they are much more broad than just recognising the Fairtrade mark. The idea of the awards is that they give the school some structure to encourage engagement with the topics around trade and globalization, but really that it is this kind of head, hands and heart, you know, to think, act, feel, reflect. It's not just about learning, it's also about doing and understanding a little bit about engaging critically with the information that the award supports. So it is much more broader than just the Fairtrade mark, and lots of schools will engage in learning about things that are not just Fairtrade mark but are more, you know, Fairtrade 2 words beyond, and I'm hoping I don't need to unpack that, but maybe I should. Also to enable young people to understand that, you know, there are these levels of things that we can do to take action for the world that we want, and some of them are very individual. So choosing products and the actions that you take as a consumer have definitely an impact, and the more broadly we do that, obviously the more impactful they are. But actually the other powers that we have to influence change are really, really important, that we rely on businesses and governments to do the things above individual consumption, and that those things can be influenced. So obviously giving young people their first tastes of how to do those things, and we've had some really interesting examples of schools that have changed the policies of their caterers, and schools that have engaged with their MPs and had quite a lot of success getting responses from them. Next slide, please, Jen. So, apologies for the headers there, because I've used our house font and it puts it all in capital. So that's why it says Fairware and then a capital E at the end. Because I think obviously with Jen using the slides, it hasn't got that font. So it's put it back to Arial or something. So apologies, that's because of the change in font. I should have done them as images. Anyway, so the idea with Fairware is that there should be very low sort of barriers to entry, that actually a lot of schools could achieve this even if they never went on and did the other awards. So they can register for the award, do an audit of the products that are used in school, the teaching and the learning, and that will set some targets for what can be achieved in the school to move that on, and carry out the first learning challenge. We'll come back to the challenges in a moment. So Fairware is really the first level, demonstrating awareness, and for some schools it would be right to just stick at Fairware, renew the award over and over and never to go any further with them. The second award is Fair Active, and again the name is there to reflect what it should show, that a bit more learning, a bit more understanding about taking action, and this is where the school will then start to be a little bit more involved in doing. So setting up a fair trade group, having an assembly to make sure the rest of the school understands, not just the kind of the people who are keen on driving it, an event of some description, and again doing a challenge. Next slide, please, Jen. Thank you very much. And yes, so Fair Achiever is the highest of the 3 awards, and obviously with the awards the idea is that you would probably work through them 1 per year, but you don't have to. So if you're coming to it new, you can actually submit all 3 in quick succession, like 1 per day for 3 days, if you feel like you've got enough evidence to do that. So Fair Achiever is the top award, and it shows that actually people are really engaging with the subject matter. So you would have a policy in your school. This is where you would repeat the learner audit in order to show how things have changed since the first one, and show some progression, to embed the learning, and we'll come back to that as well, to really demonstrate that products are in the school, that awareness has translated into doing, and to do 2 of the challenges. So I've put on this other side of this slide here the examples that we provide of challenges, but actually anything that's relevant could be a challenge. If you've got a really great idea for something which furthers the children's engagement with fair trade, the final one there says invent your own challenge, but most schools will do one of these things. So make a fair trade switch is obviously product, so it could be putting tea or coffee right through all of the staff room, the canteen, whatever. A fair trade campaign, an event, fundraising, having a speaker in school, or a visit, which could be going to a shop or some kind of like food handling place to see products, a conference, talking to other schools, and obviously invent your own. So that covers kind of awareness, campaigning, influencing others, all kinds of things. And that's also where some schools might choose to do things such as engage with an MP and use that as their challenge. So those challenges are a sort of starter for 10, but there might be other things as well. On the embed learning part, which I said I'll return to, actually that's to show that it's not just this one kind of, we do fair trade fortnight and that's it, because that's brilliant, and that's what about 10,000 schools in the UK do. They do fair trade fortnight, and that's amazing, and that's right for a lot of schools. But I think the idea is if you're going to be a fair trade school, you're doing it more than just in fair trade fortnight. So that's sort of depth versus breadth thing, and embedding learning is to show that it's there throughout the year, and obviously not continuously throughout the year, but return to on more than one occasion throughout the year. And for that part, that can be our resources or your own resources, and there's lots of resources on our website. Next slide, please, Jen. So yeah, there's just a screen grab of our website, a bit of an overview of some of the things we have on there: films, lesson plans, assemblies, games, all kinds of things. We've got about 30 odd home learning grids, which we swerved very quickly into in lockdown 2020 to provide these nice little activities that could be used at home, which were really, really popular, and they're still really popular. So there's lots of things there, and we try to refresh that offer, you know, frequently. This year's been a bit of a funny year, so we haven't put anything new up since Fortnite, but there will be new stuff coming in the next couple of months. Next slide, please, Jen. So here's a few examples of some of the things. So bottom right there is one of the home learning grids that we were talking about. So it sort of sets you out a bunch of challenges to do around a topic. Snakes and ladders, which was called Breaks and Ladders, which was quite popular a few years ago. And the top of each of the ladders, the jeopardy is, you know, a real life situation for a producer. So your bananas get black Sikatoka, or there's a hurricane or something. So the idea is there that it gives a little bit of learning as well. And you'll see there the primary education pack was one that we did for Fairtrade Fortnight, which links with the films that we produced. And those four, the family, the images of the four people up on the top right, were a series of films called Family Portrait, Fairtrade Family Portrait, and each of those explored a theme. So I put a few links at the end, but obviously just have a browse around the resources section of our website and you'll find all manner of things there to support your learning. Next slide, please, Jen. We also will get involved with particular days or campaigns or events or what have you. So last year, obviously, with COP being in the UK, we got involved with all of the COP actions in a big way for schools. Things like Great Big Green Week this year, we were pushing the letters to the future that Great Big Green Week were doing, and also sowing seeds. This was sort of off the back of the whole thank you to key workers in lockdown, where we did a sort of thank you to farmers, and it was huge. So some really lovely pieces of artwork and poems and things that children did there to say thank you to the people that we can't necessarily see, on whom we also rely. Next slide, please, Jen. Thank you. But also outside of those kind of special one-off pushes, these are just some of the outputs from the learning that schools do year round, and it constantly impresses me, the creativity that schools demonstrate around this subject. And you know, more broadly as well, it shouldn't just be about the mark. Obviously those are the most visually beautiful things, but understanding those structures and how it fits with the other things that are topical. You know, we talk an awful lot at the moment about climate change because it's the one thing our producers tell us that is causing them the biggest problems, and we know that that is not going to go away, and how fair trade is so important in that, because if you can't you know, meet your basic needs, how are you going to adapt to something that jeopardizes those needs further? And our producers are dealing with both the situation of not being able to meet their needs, the kind of the, you know, the deficit, plus also the outcomes of other people's excesses. So they're dealing with the effects of climate whilst not being able to meet their own needs anyway, and that's like double whammy, which is why so much of the climate stuff that we've been doing is really important, you know, such as how we believe the climate finance should be going to farmers and others that are living on the front line of the climate crisis. Next slide, please, Jen. Thank you. So how would you keep in touch with us if you don't already? Well, we tweet and we send out Fairtrade School's newsletters, and you can email us. And we try to put fresh things up on our Fairtrade School's website. Next slide, please. And we're a really small team. We are, you know, we find problems with meeting the demand that's upon us. So we also try to work really closely with partners who have a similar message to us. And so we do, those that can then reach places that we can't. So we often work with other organisations to influence messaging and extend our reach, and you will see various bits and bobs sometimes that come out that are coalition partnership resources, such as when we talked about the COP26 things. Some of you might know this Earth Cubs. That's a screenshot there, the banana plantation thing, which has been really great because we don't have the capacity to do even a minimal offer for every age group, but they were really keen on using our information to create something for the youngest of children. So that's lovely. Next slide, please. This is just here because I like the fact that actually with talking about fair trade, it's active citizenship now. Actually you are able to do a lot of things that are impactful for the planet, even if you are only 5 years old or 9 years old, or this isn't about preparing you to take your place in a world when you're a grown up. You just have as much impact potentially as anyone else, sometimes even more. Does anyone have any questions about the award or anything that I've just said, or resources or anything else at this point? I think you can just unmute and chat.
Yeah, and if it is that, at the end of the whole session, Joanna's going to leave the workshop just shortly. So, but if other questions pop up throughout, then, I'll take those questions from you and I can feed those back to Joanna with your email address and she can get back in touch. Or I'll do my best to answer them as well. But if anybody has, this is sort of precious time with Joanna. If anybody has questions for her just now, specifically about the award scheme or anything that she's told us about, please do feel free.
Well, I don't know if that's a good or a bad sign. It was either so mind-blowingly wonderful that no one's got anything to ask, or
I would take that. I would take that.
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. Yeah. There seems to be something coming in the chat though.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a short question.
Yes,
when schools have perhaps gone on to the final level, is there a way of looking at examples of what other schools have done, or even for the second level, the kind of ideas that they've used, ones that they think really work well? We've always marked Fairtrade Fortnight. We had a Fairtrade conference a couple of years ago, just before lockdown, the second lockdown. But it is definitely intermittent, and it's really finding ways of embedding it a bit more in the whole school so that it's easy for other teachers to say, oh, well, actually, you know what, I could do that. That's not a big ask.
Yeah, you're right. And interestingly, we are finding that we have more interest than ever in our teaching resources, but interest in the award is dropping off. And I think a lot of that is to do with the actual, getting the evidence together and submitting it. So people are, which is fine. That's whatever's right for the school. People are wanting to use the resources, engaged with the subject, but maybe the award itself is not as I don't know, not as necessary to some schools as it was. I was just thinking, this is a really good and timely question, because we were gathering up case studies and putting them on the website. And now that I look at the website, I'm like, oh, what did we do with those? So this is a very timely question, and what I'm going to do is to actually just check and see if I've done something weird and archived them that I haven't meant to do, and reinstate them in a little. I thought it was still there, but perhaps I've done something weird without thinking about it. But it could, because it is really helpful to see what others have done.
We're going to go on just now and have a look at other sort of challenges and campaigns in Scotland and some kind of best practice and ideas. So hopefully, you know, that will give you some fresh ideas as well.
And do you want to? I've just got another question. When we did the Fair Aware Award, that was when we had all the questionnaires. I mean, I remember. I mean, it was hideous. I don't know whether. I mean, this was a good few years ago now. I don't know whether it's slimlined, but I had kids from the eco group going through hundreds of questionnaires, looking at who said what to which answer. And if that's what's required again for the third level, I won't be doing it. I mean, it wasn't. It was too difficult.
Were you doing? Because I remember doing that as well with my school. But I think when I went back to it later, there's now an electronic format of the survey, so it doesn't need to be done. Because I remember doing that the same for the whole school, collating all these bits of paper and working out. But you can now do it electronically.
Right. Okay.
Which does streamline and speed up the process a lot more. And the first time round, I actually converted the audit onto Microsoft Forms and sent it round, because then children did it on laptops during ICT time, and it collates all the results into sort of Excel or pie charts and things like that, and you don't need to see through them all. But I think the foundation has that. Is that right, Joanna, now? Or was that just something I'd done myself? I'm now.
It's not much more user friendly. It's one of those things that has been a perpetual back and forth for a long time, because the data is really, really useful. And a couple of years ago, we had it all analysed by the Institute of Education, and it is so useful. We had a data set of 85,000 children's answers. It was incredible. So it's really useful to have that data, but I don't know how better to do it. And we looked a few years back at having a way that it could all be on separate, you know, that schools could have it. So it was all on separate iPads, so each child could have an iPad and fill it in with a ID number. But that was going to cost like £20,000 to do, or something stupid, which is just not possible at all. It wasn't possible then, and it's sure as heck's not possible now. So if anyone has a genius idea as to how we can get the data, and when we went through some research a couple of years ago about it, what we found was the problem really was about getting the data from children's heads to anything, rather than, you know, so whether it was to paper or directly to something else, it's a bit of a barrier. So I don't know. I'm willing to take any suggestions on that, and from our end we are you know, we need to find ways of reducing what we do with back-end admin, but that data is really, really, really helpful. It's really useful to be able to demonstrate impact, and especially at this time when everything is having to show its worth. So yeah, I'm open to any suggestions, but they've got to be low cost. Sorry,
I mean, I can use Jennifer's idea of putting it in a Microsoft form. I didn't know how to do that when we did our first survey, but I do now. So
yeah, and then you could send to either do a class by class basis, or you could do what Joanna was saying there and send, if you can, you know, send it out or have it on your school website so that children can access the form there. Then they can all do it individually. That's what we did, and then the stats come to you immediately, and there's no sifting through. And so Microsoft Forms would be my only suggestion. It's a great tool.
Yeah,
but it does take a bit of time to set up the form, but it's actually the same audit form you use again and again. So once you've created that form, you can go back to it each time you go to renew or to update. So once it's done once, you know, you've got it.
Okay.
So I mean, I have to admit, I can't even remember what it looks like currently. I know what the system's called that we use, but I can't actually remember what it looks like. I mean, maybe that's something then that we should just be using, that we should be making available.
Yeah, I don't know if you could do it on Microsoft Forms and have a master, and then you send, people can just access that, and then the stats might come straight to you as well, which would be good for you.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
certainly I did that because I agree. I know what you mean. It's time consuming and perhaps a bit disheartening if you've got a large school and you're going through hundreds.
But you also don't have to do it with all the children. The sample size is set at 60. And then if you've got fewer than 60 children in your school, we say, please let us know, because we can change that at the back end. But what we need is for schools not to just do 3 and send them to us. But also,
I can't remember how many we did. I mean, we got over 1,000 in the school, and
yeah,
we did a lot. Maybe we just did more than the 60, because 60 does sound quite achievable. But even 60 is quite a lot if you're looking at every question 60 times and counting them. I think it was that. Whereas if it was collated electronically, that would be the way to go.
Yeah, but honestly, if you've got ideas about better ways of us being able to demonstrate any kind of impact of the award, please do let me know, because I agree with you, it's that part isn't fun, but we haven't come up with anything better. Yeah, and we could probably slim questions down, but I know it's very, very hard. We send out surveys after Fairtrade Fortnight and we get very few back. It's very hard to do anything that proves that it's worth doing, if you know what I mean. So we can say, 58,000 people viewed one of our films in the last few months, but it's quite hard to show any kind of measure of values or attitudes or anything changing. So I'm really receptive to anything that you think of, like, why the heck don't they do that instead? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for Joanna? We can grill her on anything else. No. Okay, well, she's very kindly and bravely put her email address in there, so you can get in touch with her directly. Her email address is in the chat. And as I said, if at the end you've got questions that you think, oh, we should ask Joanna, let me know, and I'm happy to be the go-between. So, Joanna, thank you very much for your time this evening, and we will all be in touch soon.
Great, thank you. Bye.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Right, I'm going to carry on just now, really focusing on the situation here in Scotland and looking at our curriculum. And I'm going to start probably by following on from one or two of those questions, looking first of all at possible challenges and other things you might want to try as you move through the levels, or if you're looking for fresh ideas. So the first one I've put up is Cool Schools, which I'm sure lots of people have heard of already. So it's a supplier of ethical clothing using Fairtrade cotton, and they do lots. They're very active. They've got great learning resources on their website. They come out and do assemblies, and I know they're doing a tour for 2023 around schools, so if you go onto their website you can ask for a visit from them, and it might be that you make one swap, the cotton polo shirt or the jumper, or you see if you could swap one item of clothing over to being Fairtrade. Another that I've put up here is the JTS Killenbarrow Rice Challenge. This is something I did in schools. I've been through the award screen twice with 2 different schools. I'm a primary teacher myself, and so I've had all of these. I've had a go at, and I've done, so I know that they work quite well. This one is a challenge that the school buys in 90 kilograms of rice from JTS, which is Trading Scotland, and then you sell that to your parent body or your local community, and through the sale of that you generate enough to fund one secondary school child going to school for a year in Malawi. So Killenbarrow rice comes from Malawi and it's absolutely delicious, and it's a very reasonable price. I can't remember what you go on to sell it at. It's maybe £3.50 a bag. So we had a great big visual sack in the assembly hall, and every time a bag sold, somebody came and put a little picture of a bag of rice onto the sack, and once the sack was full, that was our, and it was so popular actually we bought another 45 kilograms. We added on and did 1.5 rice challenges because it was so popular. Another thing that we did that worked really well was we had a Fairtrade football tournament, and that could be rugby as well, because Bala balls, they're Fairtrade balls, they have rugby and footballs. Again, have an excellent website. The balls are made in Pakistan, and they've got a brilliant website with a really, really good video that you can launch it at assembly. And that's what we did, and the kids were really enthusiastic once they'd seen it. And then different classes, we put them all into different countries, and we had a mini World Cup, a Fairtrade mini World Cup. Other ideas, I know on the Scottish Fairtrade Forum, they encourage people to become Fairtrade finders, and that is encouraging people, if they're out and about, if children are out about, or parents, or you're out as a school and you're somewhere that uses Fairtrade products, you email them and let them know, and they're setting up, or they have set up, and they're constantly adding to a sort of interactive map in Scotland of where you can access Fairtrade products. And I would just bring your attention there to this other logo. I think Joanna mentioned a little bit at the beginning. So this, the Fairtrade logo, the green, blue and black that we see, that's actually a person waving that you can see in there in the head. That's the Fairtrade Foundation's logo. There are other logos that also mean products are fair trade, and this one that you can see on the screen here, if you see that logo being carried on a product, that means it is also fair trade. It's part of the World Fair Trade Organization, which means that it signs up to the 10 principles of fair trade that any organization carrying the logo must adhere to. So the forum is keen to hear of any suppliers of both of those logos. Another one I put up, and I know people do this creatively, and this is probably the one that's most done in schools, is using Fairtrade products. We had a summer term treat, we had Fairtrade ice cream stall in the summer term, and we had Fairtrade banana smoothies, and we also did on the Foundation's website, they've got sort of recipes and resources looking at Fairtrade spices, and they've got a pack about Fairtrade gingerbread, and we made up, I think it was our Christmas stall, jars with all the ingredients in them and sold them with a little recipe card to make these. And again, it's just highlighting more unusual products. It was cinnamon and ginger and cloves that are accessible through Fairtrade. And as Joanne mentioned there, especially as you go through the award scheme and you're deepening your engagement, you might want to do some campaigning. And on the Scottish Fairtrade Forum's website, they've got formats and pro formas you can use to write to your local MSP to encourage him or her to pledge support for Fairtrade and to bring that to Holyrood. So I think I had one more slide. This was something else that we did that was hugely successful, that came from the Fairtrade Committee in one of the schools I worked at, and they created a peer teaching programme that they ran during Fairtrade Fortnight. But actually, once we had it established, we realised we could run it every year without changing it, because the children moved classes, but the plan stayed the same. So the children really designed it themselves. There would be things I might change or tweak, but I left it to them. It was their project. And it basically builds progressively, introduces Fairtrade quite progressively throughout the school. So it starts from looking at the logo, the types of products that can be Fairtrade, and then goes on to look at some journeys of different products and benefits of Fairtrade to farmers in developing countries. So they designed these, and then we created a timetable, and they went into classes and did peer teaching, which was brilliant. Okay, this was actually what we've already done. Joanna had put this in her slide. I thought she was going to stay around for this little bit and take questions and answers. So I'm just going to go on because I'm aware I'd like to share with you. So I'm going to have a look just now at the Scottish curriculum and how we can, a lot of people said, you know, and Joanna touched on the idea that, you know, lots of schools engage with Fairtrade Fortnight, but how can we engage on a much deeper level and really embed it in what we do? And I know as a teacher, I always struggle with that word embed, because we're told to embed rights and we're told to embed literacy and health and wellbeing and numeracy, and everything's embedded in everything. And you think, oh my goodness, I've got to try and do all of this. So my aim tonight is to try and show you that actually it's very easy and your context is already there. You're probably already doing it. It's nothing extra or added on, and I'm going to try and show you some ways that you can perhaps just approach things that you're already doing slightly differently to have a Fairtrade element. So this is our Education Scotland Learning for Sustainability Wordle, which is a little bit mind-blowing, an awful lot on there. But actually on there somewhere it says Fairtrade, and learning for sustainability as a vision is actually an entitlement now for all children in Scotland. This is part of our formal curriculum. When schools are inspected, they will be expected to show robust evidence of learning for sustainability. All teachers now, the standards for being a fully registered teacher have been updated to include learning for sustainability. So you are required to demonstrate that you're teaching some aspects of this in your practice. It can really be divided into 3 umbrella terms, which are global citizenship education, outdoor learning and sustainability. And fair trade, really what we're going to look at just now is how we can embed fair trade using a kind of global citizenship approach in the classroom. Okay. So before I go on just to look at our curriculum, I want to make links with 2 other award schemes that are out there that your schools might be participating in. I know that I led on the Fairtrade Schools Award in the school I was in most recently, and somebody else was leading ECO and somebody else was leading RRSA. And when it came to reporting time, they would come to me and say, oh, what have you got to do with sustainability that I could put into the RRSA? Or what have you got about rights and social justice or climate justice that I can put in for eco schools? So the 3 very much dovetail, and I know, you know, we've touched a little bit just now on the amount of admin involved, and there's a huge amount of admin. I was also involved in the eco schools one in that, and I know RRSA is the same. So it does take commitment and dedication, and it depends how your school approaches it, whether time's given out of class, or you know that is something that you take on. So in the Eco Schools award scheme, Fairtrade very much dovetails, particularly in the global citizenship thread, and that's what I've put on the screen just now. So it asks explicitly, how many ethical products has your school introduced or continued to use this year, e.g. Fairtrade? So you can see a direct link there. It also says how many pupils have increased awareness about local and global issues as a result of your work. So 2 clear links there, so you can be seen to support each other. And I think all 3, certainly our experience was they were really keen to see that cross collaboration, to see learners making those connections between the climate and their behaviour and society. So, you know, do pair up. If you're looking for evidence for some things, do go to other committees and say, well, what have you done in this area? For rights respecting schools, the Silver Award requires that young people begin to see themselves as right respecting global citizens, advocate for fairness and children's rights, both locally and globally. So we can see the clear links to Fairtrade there, because through buying Fairtrade products, you ensure that the workers themselves have got reasonable working rights and that no children are involved in the production of any of the products. Therefore, you are contributing towards the protection or the respect of children's rights in developing countries. At the gold level, students are required to see themselves as rights respecting, advocate for social justice, fairness and children's rights at home and abroad. So I feel strongly, and certainly the 3 of our groups, we collaborated on providing evidence and also looked at, we joined together on some joint projects with the different committees in these areas when we were working towards ensuring that we had evidence for them.
We actually have the Fairtrade Awards down as one of our aims on our Green Flag Award action plan.
Brilliant. Okay, well, there's a really good way it's embedded. So you've got the other award scheme as an action in that through that award.
And we have it included in our RRSA kind of action plan as well. So you're right, it all ties in together. It's great actually, once you get your head around it and realise it's not as much as you think it is, because it all ties in together.
Totally. I mean, it all boils down really to sort of rights and possibly sustainable development goals. You could look at it under that umbrella, but they're all contributing to the same thing. And I think the more learners can see that their actions impact the climate, which impacts people's rights and, you know, way of life elsewhere, and they make those connections rather than seeing the 3 different award schemes or these things in silos. I think, you know, it really deepens their learning, and they say, oh, you know,
and you can, most of the awards, like we've just signed up to do the Pilot Leaf Award as well, and that's one of our points in our action plan for our Eco Green Flag Award as well. So they do all tie in together.
They do, they really do. Okay, good. Thank you for, you've backed me up there. Thank you for that. So, well, another way that I want to show that it's all tied up in part and parcel is by looking at our curriculum. Now, I have to apologise, I've made this horrible slide, and it's kind of horrible on purpose. There's a lot of text about to appear on the screen, and that is because I wanted to show in how many different curricular areas here in Scotland fair trade and ethical trading is explicitly mentioned. So in health and well-being here, we talk about rights, the rights of others, we talk about consumer and sustainability. In social subjects, we hear about social and economic differences, reducing these differences, globalization of trade, impacts for providers, consumers and the environment, and international power and influence of state. In RME, we look at fairness and equality, love, caring, sharing, human rights, make a positive difference to others, promote a more just and compassionate society. And in the sciences, we look at regard to scientific content and ethical implications of that. And we also look at world food production. So these were just a snapshot. As I said, I know that's a horrible slide. You're never supposed to have anything like that amount of text on a slide. I'm aware of that. But that was almost the point, to show that there are so many different places in our curriculum that we can embed fair trade. And we're really privileged. I know when I was speaking to Joanna before the session, she was saying, you know, Scotland is actually miles ahead of so many other nations in that way, in that we have it formalised like this, and we have our learning for sustainability as an entitled provision for our learners, whereas in lots of other curriculums, it's still very peripheral. And the other point that I wanted to make here is also that as you, I don't know how aware you are of the Rights Respecting Schools Award, but as you go through, you teach about rights initially, then you teach for the rights to promote them, and then at your gold level you teach through the rights. So rights are the way that you teach. Your classroom is set up as a rights respecting classroom, and so I think the same approach really applies to fair trade. So you might at the beginning of your journey be teaching about what fair trade is. You're very much teaching about fair trade. Then you might be teaching to promote fair trade. And then I think ultimately you teach through fair trade. So on the screen here, I've put explicit links to the curriculum, but actually you could be using fair trade as a context in modern languages. You could be using it as a context in data analysis and maths. You could be using it for reading comprehension and literacy. And the Fairtrade Foundation actually has reading comprehension in foreign languages on their website as teaching resources. So you can actually teach explicitly about fair trade, but actually use it as a context in other curricular areas as well. At Scotdec, we very much work closely as well with Oxfam, and it was interesting at the beginning when Joanna was talking about why would you do the Fair Trade Award scheme, and she talked about things like critical literacy, critical thinking, empathy, all of those. Actually, her list came from this document, which made me smile because I thought, oh, that's brilliant. So they all come from this green guide, and I'll provide links to these at the end. So these 2 guides we use at Scotdec, and it's about how to introduce a global citizenship approach to your teaching and learning. So how to encourage, to really open up what we do already, but to look at it in a much more global way and take in questions about gender, about equity, about justice, and make those links. And by doing that, we develop in young people a set of skills, values and attitudes that go on to help them to thrive in the world and to cope with the, you know, very difficult situations that many of them, you know, and concepts that they're grappling with. So what I would like to do, today, if I go back to the blue guide teaches or shows you examples of participatory methods that you can use in the classroom to develop these skills and attitudes in learners, and they're applicable to a number of situations. So what I was going to do just now is work through a couple of those with you, so that in the context of Fairtrade, so that you can think you might use the examples we used tonight in the classroom, but could you adapt those maybe to other topics and other contexts that you're already exploring with your classes. So for example, one that I think is brilliant to use and can be adapted to so many different contexts is called an issues tree. And you could have one massive issue tree in the assembly hall or in the foyer of your school. You might do it for your topic. And the way that this works is you put the issue that you're exploring with your young people across the trunk of your tree. You put the root causes of that issue along the roots. Along the branches, you would put the effects of the issue, and on it's a fruit tree, whatever fruit you've got, pears, apples, plums, on the fruit, you put possible solutions to that issue. Now, this could be used in lots of ways in the classroom. You might use it at the start of a topic to kind of ascertain how much they know about an issue. You might keep it up in the classroom, and as you learn more about an issue, add in more ideas, so it's a kind of working diagram, a working model. You might use it at the end of a topic as an informal assessment, say create an issues tree to show all that you've learned about climate change, for example. So it can be used in different ways. So if we were to take, for example, the issue of changing weather patterns, some of the root causes of our changing weather patterns, sometimes you want to contribute or suggest any. So we might have, over-reliance on fossil fuels, for example. Any other suggestions of what is causing our weather patterns? So global warming, increased greenhouse gases.
Changes in the temperature of ocean currents.
Brilliant, yep.
We've got melting of ice caps.
Melting of ice caps causing rising sea levels, yep. Okay, so you would ascertain, get as many root causes, so how we've got to this situation, and then think about some of the effects of that. So we've got changing migratory patterns, we've got, as you said, melting ice caps, we've got droughts, we've got flooding, we've got increased storms, we've got people who can't mitigate or adapt to cope with those. Especially in the global south. Some of the solutions then, because I think it's really important to do the solutions part with young people, certainly in the face of increasing eco-anxiety, to make sure that young people feel, that there are things they can do. So you might start closer to home with things that you might do at home to try and reduce climate change or have an impact on climate change that would then impact on these changing weather patterns. So this is a model that I think you could see you could apply to climate change itself. You could apply it to really, you could be buying non-fair trade products being the issue. What are the root causes of that? Well, some people perceive them to be cheaper. They could be locally sourced. What are some of the effects of that? Not supporting farmers in the developing south, not sure the ethics behind the product you're buying, not sure who's created your product, not sure of the quality control. So you could really adapt this for a number of different contexts. Another participatory approach that really helps and encourages thinking beyond surface level impressions to the underlying causes of an issue is the why chain. And this can be a really good tool for linking the local to the global, and also can take little or no steering from the teacher. And the end result is this sort of flowchart type model which highlights the complexity of an issue. And once the model's sort of gone as far as it can, you can look at the boxes on the right and encourage children to ask, is it fair that this is happening and what can be done to change things? Because one big part of global citizenship education is helping learners to understand the complexity of issues out there and how they're related, and that there aren't always answers. You know, so if we look here, why are some children unable to go to school at all? So that is the issue, sorry. Well, why is it an issue? Perhaps because they've got to work. Well, why do they have to work? They've got to help support a family. Well, why have they got to do that? Because their parents can't work, or they're in very low paid work. So it really delves much more deeply into a topic, but it's sort of led by the children. And I was doing a course to early years teachers, and they said this is brilliant for nursery school pupils, because whilst they wouldn't do a written one, they would maybe discuss it. You know, they're always asking, but why, but why, but why? And he said I could see this train going on and on and on for ages. So it's a good way of delving below the surface and to look into topics. Another methodology that I really like is interrogating images. And the challenge for us as teachers is just to start to find a really good quality image to start with. And again, you might use this just as a one-off discussion or at the beginning of a topic to, again, ascertain what learners know about something. Can spark interest. It might be something that you find is the stimulus to go off and carry out research. You could use it for a current news item, and I quite like hiding a piece of an image and asking learners, you know, what do you think's hidden there, and why? And if you were going to be in that image, where would you be? Would you be a bit nervous, or would you be joining in? How would you be feeling? Could there be speech bubbles coming out of different characters? What might they say? Who's missing from this? Whose voice is not there? Who can you see? Where do you think this image is? So this is actually, I don't think I can move this box in this interactive mode. No, I can't. But behind that box is actually cocoa beans coffee beans that are being emptied out onto the ground for drying. And you might say, well, where is that? It looks like a rainforest scenario. Oh, isn't it interesting that it's all females that are there? Where are the men? You know, they look happy. Are they happy? What are their working conditions like? You know, what's the security of coffee like just now? So, you know, you can go off to research in quite a lot of depth. So what I'm going to do just now, because I'm aware that I've been talking for ages and you probably want to go and do a bit yourselves, is I'm going to have created a Jamboard and if you haven't used a Jamboard before, I'll talk you through how we're going to do that just now. And what I've done is I've taken a number of sort of commonly addressed topics in schools. So I've looked at things like climate change, transport, toys, rainforests, plants and trees, children's rights. And what I've done is put together a series of sort of bigger questions. So what we're looking at here is really delving below. I know when we think of fair trade in schools, it's great that we're doing the bake sales, we're doing the Fairtrade fortnight, you know, different events. But just now, really thinking about putting it into our curriculum. If we think about everyday topics that we are teaching and just think about asking a few bigger questions while we're doing it, it doesn't require creation of whole new topics and curricular areas, just maybe needs one or two bigger, fatter questions in there that really open them out and give them a fair trade focus. So I've suggested a few, certainly not exhaustive, just some that I've maybe used or some that I could think of. And at the bottom, a selection of resources that you might use in the classroom to explore those questions. Now, I will send you out this Jamboard afterwards, so you will have all of these links there and all of the questions. So this is what the page will look like. What I'm going to do is send you the link to the Jamboard and put it in the chat. So you click on that, and then I'll give you sort of 10 minutes to have a look through the Jamboard yourself. The last 3 slides, I included 3 more participatory methods for you to consider, just like the ones we've looked at, the issue tree and the why. I've put 3 more at the end for you to have a look at as well. So to move through the Jamboard, you can see that red arrow up at the top. It's a bit like flipping through a notebook. So you press forward and you'll go through the pages, and I think I've made 12 or 13, something like that. If you find the text a bit small, on the left-hand side here, there's a magnifier, so you can click on that and the text will be larger in the page. I did ignore this one. I put in post-its. You can add in post-its but actually I changed that because you're all going onto the same Jamboard, and I was worried it might be a bit crazy with everybody flinging post-its on top of each other. So actually it's not interactive. You're going to flick through it as if it is a notebook. So does anybody have any questions about that? Are we okay with that? So I'm going to put the link just now into the chat box. As I said, that Jamboard link will stay open, and I'll email it out to you so that you've got that afterwards as well if you want to go back in and have a look at any of the resources. Does anybody have any comments or anything about any of that they think either it's useful, or they think, yeah, I could see that working in the classroom, or that's not quite, I can't see that working? Certainly a lot of those I have used with learners myself. In plants and trees, we always finished our topic looking at plants in our lives. That's part of the Scottish curriculum, and we looked at the Malawi tea estates and how there's a little challenge. That's one of the links put to. You can go into groups and discuss how you would best spend the Fairtrade premium, and we do that with primary children in primary 4. And after that, I always had a massive sign up for the Fairtrade committee the following year because they loved it so much. So, lots of these are tried and tested. Guardians of the Rainforest is an absolutely brilliant resource. Again, that could be plants and trees, that could be a climate resource, that could be food, it could be rainforests. So lots of the resources that I suggested there obviously would apply in different contexts to different topics. Is there anything anybody would like to comment on, or could see the relevance? I tried to include, we had some participants tonight, we've got a mixture of early years, primary and secondary, so I've tried to make sure that there was a combination of all three there available. I don't know how you felt about the participatory methods at the end as well. I think the agree-disagree line is another really easy visual tool to use with learners. I've put that up at the beginning of a topic with the discussion statement, and then we've kept it up throughout the topic, and children have gone and moved their position along the continuum as they've maybe learnt more or researched more or heard different perspectives. They've moved their stance on the line. And I think the important thing about that is encouraging children to give evidence and give a reason for their position on the line. And also it comes back to that idea of empathy and almost a humbleness that it's okay to change your position. You don't have to be steadfast in your position and not open to hearing or changing views, depending on what you've heard from other people. So as I said, these participatory methods really try to, by their very usage, try to develop different skills in young people. Encouraging them to be critical, to ask questions of each other, to communicate, to give reasons for their thoughts, but also that idea of empathy and, global citizenship education at its very heart. It's all about realizing that our perspective, is built up as a result of who we are and where we are. That could be our gender, our age, our occupation, our race, our ethnicity, lived life experience. And so it's encouraging young people to really realise that their perspective is just one of many valid perspectives. And, to be doing our job fully as teachers, we need to give them opportunities, and Fairtrade's a great context for that, for them to explore other perspectives relating to different topics, so that, they are aware of those, and that might well change their own perspective and outlook on an issue. So I've just put up on the screen there our 3 email addresses. As I said, Catherine couldn't be here tonight from the Scottish Fairtrade Forum. I know she's going to try to be at the next session. That's my email address at the top. We run a whole, a really wide number of courses. If you're interested on that global citizenship element in teaching and using those participatory methods, we've run a number of courses, some that are curriculum specific. So we've got a primary science and primary maths using a global citizenship approach coming up after Christmas. And if you go onto our website, Scotdec, you can see our wide number of resources that we've got and the different courses that are coming up. And that was Joanna's email there if you've got any questions for her specifically. But I will email out the presentation so that you have all of the links and some of the documents that I've referenced in the course tonight. I'll send those all out to you afterwards as well. So we're, love to reach out and support if we can, and please be in touch. And we'd offer any advice. I can give you what advice I can, having been through the scheme a few times and worked with other organisations on it, some of the other things that we've done, or contact the foundation directly as well. I know that they are always keen to support. Okay, all right. Oh, thank you. Don't worry at all about if you didn't manage to do the form, Barbara. That's fine. Thank you for coming along and your feedback there. That's great. Okay, well, we will bring it to a close there. Thank you for coming along today. As I said, I know this was a challenging day for some teachers here in Scotland. If you're choosing to strike, I know you've probably had a difficult day, and appreciate you coming along this evening. And if you've got colleagues who were signed up and didn't come because of strike or other reasons, we are planning on repeating the session probably in the next few weeks, and then we will do a slightly different session looking at Fairtrade Fortnight in January 2023. So I'll say goodbye for now, and thank you very much, and hope to see you at another course again soon, and good luck with your Fairtrade journey.